The night I found the candle, I wasn't looking for it, I was looking for a place to sleep. The rain had soaked me through, and the wind in the woods felt like it had teeth. I had wandered for years with no place to call home, carrying only a weathered backpack and a notebook full of unfinished stories. That night, my tired eyes caught a glimpse of a crooked chimney rising above the thorny trees. An abandoned house. No windows lit, no smoke in the air, just a dark outline against the moon. I should have kept walking. Something about it felt wrong, like a breath held too long. But I was desperate for shelter, and desperation often blinds you to the things you ought to fear. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood and forgotten lives. The floor groaned beneath my boots, and the shadows stretched as if they'd been waiting for me. The walls still held faded paintings, faces blurred by time and dust, and there was a cracked mirror leaning against the far wall. But what drew my eyes wasn't the furniture or the portraits, it was the candle sitting on the table in the center of the room. It was small and pale, unremarkable at first glance, except for the strange black thread running through its wax like a vein. Its wick seemed untouched, though it looked ancient, as if it had been waiting through years of silence. I remember telling myself it was just a candle. Yet something in me hesitated before touching it, as if my life up until that point had been leading me here. I picked it up, feeling its weight, heavier than it should have been, as if holding the weight of stories I couldn't yet understand. My fingers trembled around the match I struck. I lit it. The flame leapt alive in an instant, burning steadier than it should in the damp cold air. At first, I thought it was the flicker of the fire playing tricks on my weary mind. But then, across the cracked mirror, I saw it, the faint outline of another version of me. A version that stood taller, his clothes cleaner, his face wearing a different kind of sorrow. He vanished before I could blink. The flame wavered again, and suddenly the room felt crowded with whispers, like echoes of footsteps I'd never taken that I should have blown it out. But I couldn't. Something about that flame pulled me in, like it knew every question I'd ever buried under silence. And then it happened, the flame brightened, glowing golden instead of orange, and the air around me shimmered. I saw fleeting images, me standing at a crossroads in a city I'd never visited, sitting beside a woman I'd never met, holding the hand of a boy who called me father. My heart hammered against my ribs. These weren't just random visions. They felt like lives I might have lived if I had made different choices. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the chair with the candle between my hands, watching the threads inside it curl and melt. Every flicker pulled another fragment of an unwritten story into the light, a chance I hadn't taken, a road I hadn't walked, a kindness I hadn't given. It was both wonder and agony, seeing the lives I'd never known I could have had. By dawn, I understood one thing. The candle wasn't ordinary. It didn't just burn wax. It burned the threads of fate itself. I carried it with me as I left the house, wrapped in cloth like a fragile treasure. The world outside felt different, as if the air was waiting for what I would do next. For the first time in years, I wasn't just wandering aimlessly. I had something to protect, and something to fear. That day, as I walked toward the nearest town, the candle flickered again. A young woman on the street stumbled at the edge of a bridge, her umbrella ripped by the wind. I didn't know her, but when the flame danced, I saw two futures, one where she slipped and disappeared into the river, and another where I grabbed her arm in time. The vision snapped away as quickly as it came. My heart raced. I lunged forward, catching her wrist just as she lost her footing. She stared at me in shock, tears in her eyes. It wasn't chance. The candle had shown me what would happen if I did nothing. I saved her, but as I looked down, I noticed the candle's wax had sunk lower. A part of it had burned away for that moment. I began to wonder what price I was paying every time the flame chose to reveal something to me. In the days that followed, I started noticing the flame's moods. Sometimes it shimmered brighter near people hiding secrets, showing me glimpses of truths they didn't dare speak. Other times, it quivered when choices loomed close, forks in the road, moments that could shift a person's whole life. But the more I used it, the more I sensed something dark behind its gift. For every truth it revealed, a small piece of my own future was being consumed. That I met a boy named Ian during one of these days, a street artist who sold sketches at the market. His eyes carried the same restlessness I saw in my own reflection years ago. He became my companion, fascinated by the candle but also afraid of it. It was Ian who first asked the question I hadn't dared to voice: what happens if it burns all the way down? I didn't have an answer then. But the thought gnawed at me. I couldn't forget the way the flame sometimes dimmed unexpectedly, as if hungering for something more than wax. Weeks passed, and I began to feel the weight of what I was carrying. The candle had saved lives, yes, and it had shown me paths I'd lost, but it also made me ache for things I could never reclaim. I had once dreamed of being a writer, of telling stories that mattered. But I'd walked away from that dream years ago, believing I wasn't meant for anything more than wandering. The candle showed me otherwise. It showed me that even small choices ripple through the fabric of destiny. And it made me ask, if I had one final flicker left in the flame, what would I burn it for? Then came the night when everything changed. I was sitting by a dying campfire with Ian asleep nearby, the candle between us casting a soft glow. The flame flared without warning, brighter than I'd ever seen. I saw a vision of myself standing before a massive storm, a wall of black water threatening a coastal village I had passed months ago. I saw myself running with others, carrying children to higher ground, saving lives, but in that vision, I also saw the candle's flame snuffing out in the end, as if the act would cost me everything. I had to choose: keep wandering, protecting what little future I had left, or return to the village and let the candle burn for them. At dawn, I chose the road back to the coast. The journey was long and punishing. Rain pounded the earth for days, and the wind howled like a warning. When we finally reached the village, the people were already preparing for the coming storm. They didn't know how bad it would be. The candle flickered as I stood among them, showing glimpses of the wave that would come in the night, taller than the tallest trees. Ian stayed by my side as we warned the villagers, urging them to move to higher ground. Some believed us. Others refused. And then the candle began to glow so fiercely I could hardly look at it. It showed me the exact moment the flood would strike in the faces of those who would be lost if we didn't act fast. That night, as the storm surged toward the coast, I knew what I had to do. I took the candle in my hands and held it high as if it could guide us all. I lit the path for the villagers to cross the broken bridge, leading them up the hill. Every step felt like the flame was pulling a piece of me away. By dawn, the storm had passed, and the village stood battered but alive. We had saved them. But when I looked at the candle, it had burned almost to the end. Only a thin ring of wax remained. Ian looked at me, his face pale. "If it goes out, what happens to you?" I didn't answer. I didn't know. As the sun rose, the candle's flame dimmed, quivering as though ready to vanish. I felt a strange calm settle over me. I had spent so much of my life running from purpose, convinced I was nothing more than a wanderer. Yet here I was, with a single candle, shaping destinies and saving lives. I realized that even if my own future was burning away, I had finally become part of something larger than myself. I had found a story worth living, even at the cost of my own destiny. That morning, as I watched the flame's final flicker, I smiled. Not because I was unafraid, but because I finally understood, the candle had never been about the power to change fate, it had been about giving me the courage to choose the right path, no matter the cost. And as the last spark of the flame went out, I whispered to the rising sun, "Some destinies are worth burning for."